Radomir, sir, thank you for coming to the What, Why, and How Can I podcast. And actually, we were just talking. You're like, dude, you should change your name. Honestly, that name is very dear to my heart, but I love your idea. So this segment might be called the Couch Career Conversations, presented by this young man right here. So thank you for that, sir. What, why, and how can I are the three basic questions of this conversation on these couches. So the goal is obviously to provide the best insight we can into a career or into a field to students in college, to students maybe outside of college trying to change careers, you know. So you as yourself, talk a little bit about yourself. What do you do? What you're in school for, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. I think I'm happy to be here, first of all.
Awesome.
I think my situation story would resonate with a lot of people, and I've met mentors in my life who've had very similar paths to me. I am ashamed to admit, but I hated school, didn't like school just throughout my life. Dude. My brother's superstars.
Yeah.
I mean, crushing it, straight A's, this and that. I'm kind of always slacking. Mm-hmm. And a large part of it, I think, was lack of what a lot of people have is, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I don't know where I'm going to be. I don't see myself in a field.
There's not a clear path.
Yeah, I have no idea what. So, like, you can't put effort into something. It's hard to put effort into something that you don't know where you're going.
True. Yeah, that's true.
And so that's my path. And then I remember approaching toward the end of high school, my mom came to me, was like, all right, well, which community college do you want to go to? I felt disrespected. Both my brothers are at UCs. Right. You're talking to me about community colleges. I mean, no disrespect to someone who wants to go that way, but coming from my family, I was taken back. And I looked at my transcript and I was like, I see where you're coming from. It makes sense. And so then I had a goal. I was like, oh shoot, I need to go to a better school than a JC. This is like my junior year.
Yeah.
And so I stepped it up. Picked up my grades, made it to got into Sac State. You know, not the hardest thing to do, but it's not a JC.
It's better, yeah.
And then again, I started Sac State, and I'm a year in. I'm like, honest to God, I don't know what I'm here for. I know I'm going to college because everyone goes to college.
What classes did you start with?
So I was a criminal justice major.
Okay.
And the program's impacted. There's more students who want to be in the major than the school for some reason allows at a given moment. So you have to take prerequisites and whatnot. That way they kind of filter students.
Okay.
And so then I was going through that and I was like, well, everyone here is trying to be a cop.
Yeah.
To this day, I still watch cop videos, think being a cop's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
If I had a second life, I'd be a cop. But I, like, with my parents, and, you know, I knew I didn't want to disappoint them in doing that.
Yeah.
My entire family's in science. I hate science. Science and I never got along.
Like, you hate science, like...
I don't click.
Studying the science? Because personally, I'm not good with, like, physics and, like, all this crazy chemistry stuff. But I love the concept. You know, it's interesting to listen to a smart person.
Heck yeah.
Okay.
I love hearing them tell me about it, but when I have to sit down and study it, we don't click.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's why I kind of went a different path. And then toward the end of school, I was kind of like, all right, well, I'm about to graduate. I have no idea what I'm about to do. Where to go. I knew from criminal justice, there was the prevailing options were being in law enforcement, so corrections, sheriff, high patrol, that kind of field, and then the legal field.
Okay.
And I knew the legal field would very much entertain my parents, and it was good. It's a good career.
Yeah, it is.
Well paying, respected by not everyone.
Depends what side of the,
to be fair,
the line you're on. Yeah.
Right. And well, that's largely due because it's misunderstood. And so
let's back up right there. You said the law field or the legal field is misunderstood.
Good.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. People don't understand what lawyers do. I can get into this a little bit more in a second, but generally speaking, people don't understand what lawyers do. People think that lawyers are liars, which not completely false because humans, we're liars. We deceive. But people think that when you defend someone, you're lying. When in essence, what you're doing is, as a defense attorney, is you're not saying that your client didn't do X, Y, Z. You're saying prove it, and I'm going to make you go through the hurdles to prove it. And so sometimes the other side doesn't do enough to prove it, and then someone like O.J. Simpson gets off, and you're like, wow, he was lying and said he didn't do it. Never said that.
Yeah.
Prove it.
You couldn't prove it.
That's all you have to do.
Okay. So I'm a lawyer, and I know this dude that I'm defending stole the carrots out of the garden, but they can't prove it. Is it like right for me to say, I'm thinking in my head, I know this dude stole the carrots from the garden, but these people can't prove it, so he's free to go. But I know he's guilty. Is that not? How does a lawyer look at that, or is that just like, I'm a good lawyer?
How do you know he did it? Why do you have more evidence than the other people have that he did it?
Dang. You got me.
I mean, it's a legit question.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe you have a close relationship with your client, and he told you the truth.
But again, he can't be lying.
That's true. So you don't know.
Your job as a lawyer, your duty
is to find the facts.
Is to represent him. Is to represent your client, because he can't. I mean, the law it's a whole nother language, and that's why they say, a man who represents himself has a fool for his client.
Okay. That makes sense,
right? You can't represent yourself in the field you have no idea about.
Yeah.
Same thing as a doctor. The doctor knows more than you, even though it's you that he's examining.
Even though you've read articles on Google.
Exactly. Right. So that's, I guess, the role of the lawyer. And yeah, people get emotional and it's hard not to. But the role of the lawyer isn't to lie. Well, certainly some do.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge misconception why people are going, oh, you're a lawyer, liar, lawyer.
Yeah.
LOL,
But that's true. But I like how you said, when I asked you, like, if you know he sold the carrots, you said, how do you know? So I like to look now that you've said that. I love the fact that I could look at a lawyer at any case as which side can present the facts the best, who can make the facts the most clear to, say, the judge or whoever's listening. So that's very interesting. So you were saying, before I interrupted you, to kind of explain how people see lawyers. You were talking about the path of law, or there's a.
I was telling you how I was finishing law school.
Yes.
Graduate school, undergrad.
Okay, you. Oh my gosh, dude.
Is this being edited out? We're going to keep this in.
We're going to keep this in so you guys can see that I just screwed up on my 24th interview. This has never happened. What the heck? Okay.
Don't be intimidated.
Huh?
Don't be intimidated.
This freaking lawyer sitting in front of me. Okay.
Law student.
Dude, that's my brother Yuri. I'm like, what's up, firefighter? I'm not a firefighter yet. Don't do that. I'm like, dude, you're pretty much a fire. And he got heated, bro. He's like, I'm not a firefighter. You know how hard this is? I still have to go work my ass off for the next 3 months or whatever.
For me, it's more than that. I get in trouble if I misrepresent myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, you're practicing law without a license.
Oh, that's true.
And next thing you know, I'm not going to be a lawyer because they've seen me.
Because you're a liar.
There you go, yeah.
No, you were saying after you graduated, there was two paths. Like a cop sheriff side, and then the legal side.
Yeah.
And you said you feel like the legal side is misrepresented. So that's where we're gonna continue right there. So Radomir, so now that we kind of understand how a lawyer might be misrepresented, or some people might think of a lawyer as a bad person versus a good person, I like the fact that we just talked about it, that a lawyer is just someone who can present the best facts to a case, whether it be in defense or in prosecution. So there's two sides, the cop, the sheriff, and then the legal side. So, and you chose the legal side, right? How did that come about?
It was the better of two options in terms of gaining respect from my community. But I'll admit I tried both. Went to the California Highway Patrol testing just for the sake of, in case legal side doesn't work out. But I still was planning with my buddies to take the LSAT, which is the exam you take to apply to law schools.
Okay.
That score is very important to schools. In addition to your GPA.
What was it called?
LSAT.
What is an LSAT? Just your standard testing, or?
Yeah, it's to be fair, it's not law related, but they're testing your logical reasoning.
Okay.
In essence.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you have to take a course for that, study for it, and
so it's like a prereq to apply to a law school.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so those two are the most important things law schools seem to look at, is your GPA and your LSAT score.
Okay.
And so I was preparing for that, took that. So I had a year off between undergrad and law school.
Nice.
Not like by choice.
Just because you were waiting to get in?
Waiting to get in, because it takes about a year, half a year process of application, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, gotcha.
And I didn't start earlier because I didn't know what I was going to do.
Right.
And retrospectively, I liked that year off. I think it helped me mature during that time. Because I mean, everyone at in college isn't at that party stage, so to speak. You're kind of like young and wild. Trying to relax. All your friends are doing adventurous things, and so
in 2020, it's cool to travel now. So everybody's trying to travel.
It's awesome. I still want to try.
It still is cool, but it's cooler to travel.
Never out of style.
No, it's not. But I just feel like it's cooler to travel right age, and when you actually have money to enjoy it,
and with less luggage, aka kids.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah. And so that was my thing. And yeah, for sure, I think that I would have had a much tougher time in law school had I jumped in right away from a maturity standpoint.
And maybe you like you said, you matured. So once you did get in, it was probably easier for you to kind of dedicate yourself, to studying. And so what made you kind of decide, okay, I'm actually going full send. I'm going into law school. I'm committing myself to this.
Why not? That was kind of the thing. It was like, hey,
you got accepted, and you're like, let's do it.
I mean, because look at my other alternatives. I mean, being a cop.
You didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I want to maintain relationships. And secondly, my other option is do something that has nothing to do with my bachelor's degree that I spent 4 years on.
Right, exactly.
Go do construction, go work on cars. Not to disrespect those jobs, but it's like, why would you spend 4 years and not use?
Wisely said. And some people, unfortunately, do spend those 4 years, and then they do a 180 and do something totally different. And now they're stuck with student loans, other stuff, and wasted time, most of all. Even though we had this one guest on the show that said time is never wasted, it's always an experience. And I agree, you do gain something. So,
although time is the most valuable thing you have, so
it is.
Fancy me that.
You can't get it back. So you get into law school, and what's the hardest part? Obviously, somebody listening right now, maybe they're a lawyer already, and they're like, dude, let's get to the lawyer part, or the legal side. But then there's also people listening that are still in high school, and maybe they're just joined their high school mock trial team, and they're like, what is this all about? So you started school, if you mind sharing kind of your experience, starting out as a newbie in a law school.
Everything about law school is hard. And this is again why, retrospectively looking, I'm glad I had a year off, because even with a year off, I came, I think, a little bit too immature into law school, in that I took it too lightly.
Okay.
I mean, I was working out during my year off, and when I came to law school, I was still trying to spend that same amount of time working out. when the rest of my classmates stayed after school in the library till 9:30. I went home, changed, went to the gym, came home, did a quarter of my reading, came back to class. And first year, everyone says it's the hardest, and I was like, yeah, okay, like I'll manage. And it's I have no words. Honestly, it's really tough. Like I remember telling people, like one night of law school studying, like from one day to the next day, particularly my first year, I did more reading, or was required to do more reading, whether I did or not. I was required to do more reading than I think I had in like a semester of undergraduate school.
Wow.
So I remember an undergraduate, to be fair, it's like there's a lot of slacking off, and then you study a day or two before the midterm, get a B or A. Same thing with papers. Like, let's be real, we'll give you an entire 2 months to do it, and you're not going to start it till before it's due.
The crazy part is you're saying you were required so much reading. You just started. They required you to read. Did you know what you're reading, or are you like defining half of the paragraphs that you're reading? What happened there?
So that's the hard thing about law school, is it's a whole different way of studying that you've ever done before. It's very different. So I'm reading through it. I'm like, okay, I more or less understand it. That's not acceptable. I remember I showed up to class one time, did my reading, and professor called me, asked me a question, and I thought I answered it, and he yelled at me for 5 minutes in the class that I should come to class prepared and doing my reading. And I was like, I swear I did my reading. I just didn't understand to the level you expected me to. And that was a good learning experience where it's like, hey, somewhat understanding is not good enough. And that's why it takes so much longer to study and prepare for class and the next day. It's difficult. It's confusing.
So it's not just read the chapter. It's to read the chapter, analyze the chapter. You probably have to annotate the chapter, like find lawyer stuff behind what it's actually saying, define things. So you started school. You said the first year of school is the hardest.
Everyone says that, yeah.
Second year of school, books. Are you spending a lot of money on books?
Of course.
Wow.
Of course.
So what's an average? What are you spending for a semester?
So it depends. My first semester of law school, I spent over $1,000 on my books. Retrospectively, if I knew better, I would have bought on Amazon and online other resources.
Okay.
Which I did my second semester, and then after that, I think I've maybe once or twice bought from the actual school bookstore.
Okay.
But that was the mistake. But generally, up to $500 using online resources is how much I would spend on books a semester.
Okay. So yeah, are you okay? So you have class, right? I'm trying to understand like a law program. I was gonna try to understand it, but I can't. How about you kind of just explain that to me and to us? What is a law program? First year, what are you learning? Second year, what are you learning? You're in your third year now, or fourth? Third year. Just kind of like your year 1, year 2, year 3, kind of how your skills are building, what skills are being worked out first.
Law school is primarily, the point of law school is to make you think, teach you how to think like a lawyer. Sort of the downside to it is the other expectation is you thought they would teach you how to practice law, meaning learning how to file every motion and complaints and everything. There's a couple classes that can help you with that, but most of that is learned in the field through an externship. But mostly you go through cases and understand why judges have been ruling certain ways, how they've been interpreting law, and
so kind of like would it be right to say like the philosophical side of reading law, or is there not a philosophical side? Is there?
I'm sure there is. I wouldn't say it like that, but just generally kind of thinking outside the box, or in the box of lawyer, how a lawyer would think, approaching something. And so first year, the school selects the classes for you. So you have pretty much no say in what classes you're gonna have in the first year. And just about every class they assign you is gonna be that subject is being tested on the bar. And then second year, you get to choose classes, whatever classes you want. There's a writing class you have to take, but you get to decide what professor you want to take it with, what time you want to take it at. And same with the third year. Third year, take whatever classes you want
Okay.
and whatever times you want. But of course, there's still graduation requirements with certain type of courses they require you to take.
Okay.
But that's the structure of the 3 years.
Okay.
If
So
you're full time.
okay, like law or a lawyer is such a general term. I feel like
Right.
because there's lawyers in the hundreds, thousands different industries that we have around the world in the United States. When in these 3 years do you actually choose, or do you even choose what industry you like to be a lawyer in, or does that happen after you finish law school and, like you said, internships, externships, you kind of try out different paths?
That's actually a good question. And the answer to that is you choose on your own, sporadically, kind of. There's concentrations that you can have. They're like 4 or 5, very general. Also, like you can have a business concentration, stuff like that. But in general, you kind of, there's students that come in knowing what they want to do. There's students who've come in who've, this might surprise you, I'm one of the younger students in my law school. A lot of the students are people who've had careers and they've decided to go to law school later.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of them kind of know generally where they want to,
Okay.
what they want to do, like environmental or aviation, criminal, because of their experience or their passions.
Okay, gotcha.
For me, it was back to the same thing I've dealt with. What kind of law am I going to do? I have no idea. And then I kind of discovered this field of construction litigation. And it's like, hey, there's many of us who've done construction, and surprisingly, there's actually a legal side to it.
Right.
And I was like, why not? Because everyone's like, do what you love and whatnot. And it's like, why not combine the two things I know?
Yes.
Law and construction.
Yes.
Versus me trying to learn an entirely new subject and enter into a field.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's kind of how you, I guess, decide.
Just based on your life experience and your life experience growing up. I know your dad is a contractor, right? So he does contract work and or does homes and stuff. So you kind of grew up doing that, and now you have this law experience. So that actually helped you choose something. I mean, usually people that go into criminal justice are their parents or somebody close to them is either in the criminal legal system or the criminal justice system, a cop or something, and that kind of, so their life experience predetermines kind of for them.
Oftentimes, yeah.
Yeah, so that I guess that's what happened to you, which is kind of nice. Because like you said, to learn a whole new industry would be more difficult, but since you know the basics of construction, now you can kind of take it and take the legal side of it, knowing what the physical side and the real part, if I could say that. So I guess somebody listening to us or watching, and they're confused about, they want to go to law, but they don't know what to do. I guess a wise piece of advice would be to think about what you're exposed to the most in real life, what you're comfortable with. Maybe like you were saying, what your family's comfortable with, and then they'll support you and kind of help you, maybe direct you in the right direction. And then you never know, maybe you'll go to law school and you'll do an internship somewhere and you'll fall in love with it, right? So you said construction litigation. What is construction litigation? Can you talk about that?
I can. So there's also 2 different kinds of law you can do. Okay. There's transactional law and there's litigation.
Okay.
Transaction.
Define.
Sure. Litigation is what everyone thinks of a lawyer, is going to court. Okay. Disputing, or like arguing disputes and whatnot. Transactional is the advice side of it. Okay. And so if you think of an in-house counsel inside of a corporation, that's transactional law. Okay. They don't go to court. Maybe they do, but generally they're given advice inside the corporation company on law matters, make sure the company's in compliance and doing the, I guess, less TV entertaining work. Then we have litigation. So you do file complaints and go to court and go through the court system. Okay. So construction litigation is disputing construction issues, and
So
through the court.
litigation is just the fact that this is going to court
Through the court.
or through the
Right,
court.
right.
So construction litigation is disputing construction issues. Does this have to do with? Is this specific towards like contractor between state, contractor between, or employee between employer? Or does that all come together?
Employer versus employee versus employer is employment law.
Okay.
But contractor versus the general contractor versus subcontractor very often.
Okay.
Versus developers versus investors
Okay.
versus a buyer,
Okay.
like a homeowner association, everything. So a construction defect is very common in construction litigation.
Okay.
Like in California, I think the statutory period is 10 years.
Wow.
So you can sue your contractor for a defect in your house within 10 years of them finishing your home.
So check this out.
Great for homeowners, bad for contractors.
Yes, I agree. But my chimney is leaning a little bit, and I think it's because it's a defect, dude. The way they did the flashing is horrible. Can I use you to sue them?
Don't ask me for advice.
Okay.
Talk to me in August.
You're not licensed yet, so I would have to ask. You're still a student, third-year student. So once you're licensed, I'll reach out to you. Okay, so that's a little bit about what, and we definitely covered the why you chose to go there. What was? You said all of law school was hard, but you also said that school wasn't your thing, right? You didn't like to study. What was the most difficult thing about law school? More specifically, like, was it the studying part? Was it some people have bad communication skills? Was it learning how to communicate like a lawyer? You know, because there's things that kind of I'm guessing to law, there's writing, there's reading, there's analyzing, there's interpreting law, and then there's the communication part, speaking, public speaking. Which one of those do you think maybe you struggled the most, or you could, like, coming into school, you could have prepared yourself a little better?
Just gonna have two questions there. Last part, second question, coming into school,
Okay.
how I prepared better.
Okay, let's go with that one first. Like, if you were restarting school, right? You like the word retrospectively. Retrospectively, how would you prepare yourself better for law school?
Mentally preparing. I wish I had more honest advice
Okay.
coming into school. To be fair, I didn't do like diligent research. I didn't reach out to a bunch of lawyers and law students and be like, hey, tell me about this. What can I do? And what's law school like?
Mm-hmm.
And then to the people I did sort of talk to, I kind of felt an unwillingness to help.
They just kind of brushed you off.
Yeah, I kind of felt that, and which probably is part of the reason why I didn't look for more help, because that was the response I got, and I was kind of like, I'm gonna get more of this.
Nobody else is gonna. Yeah. Okay.
But mentally preparing for the commitment.
Okay.
And so regarding what's the hardest thing about it is all the above. Is, like I said, my first month of law school, I was still trying to go to the gym and have a social life.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you need to choose one or the other. And it's a huge commitment. And it's to be like, think about it. Like, in the end of the day, it's 3 years. It's not that long. 3 years fly by. Like, I'm almost done.
Yeah.
And so it's 3 years of just committing, where it's like, you still have summers. If you're not, even if you do an internship or work, you get off at 5.
Yeah.
You don't carry your work home with you as an intern.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just 3 years of commitment of like, sit down, study, focus. And then you have 2 weeks between each semester and whatnot, or in the winter period and then summer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a huge commitment, which is a lot of people not prepared to do. And for me, coming in from undergrad and somewhere else, it was like, hey, I didn't have to commit there. I'm not gonna have to do it here. And it's like, it's a complete different ball game.
Okay.
Learning how to study, also huge. It's like, I didn't know how to study. I didn't know what works for me to study, because I've never really had to study on a daily basis. It was usually like, hey, it's a midterm coming up. Let me pull up my stuff at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And get an A or B on this test tomorrow.
Okay.
And so it was like, no, this is like, because oftentimes, which is I had learned the hard way, is you have to study through the entire semester, so that when your final comes, you're not learning you're reviewing.
10-4.
Like I watched, this is an example of sidetrack, but it's applicable here. Watch a lot of UFC. And if you listen to the fighters that talk about fight week, they're like, hey, how are you preparing? Like, I'm relaxing. Like, I don't have time to prepare. This is the week where I need to like just hone in on my skills. The fight's on Saturday. All the preparation was done the last 3 months.
Fight camp.
That's
true.
That's school. So I think this is applicable for any student. Is like your fight camp. The thing about it is the 3 months of focus. Your diet, your training, discipline. It's like 3 months of discipline. Prepare for your final, like review. Because it'll be a lot less stressful week if you're reviewing and honing down your skills instead of learning. You know, like, oh shoot, like what is, you know, these evidence codes?
Yeah.
Like how do you apply them? Where do you start?
Yeah.
And I found myself.
I have no idea what you just said. Evidence codes.
Yeah.
What is an evidence code?
Well, there's rules of evidence in law in general. Okay. So that's another difficult thing with law is we want to filter in what comes into court, what a juror hears. So we exclude a lot of stuff that we think is not fair to include.
Okay.
For example, that's part of what happened to O.J. Simpson is the glove, right? They didn't include it into evidence because there were some procedural issues. And that was a key factor in him being
guilty or not guilty.
Right. So yeah, that's generally evidence codes.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to try to understand this in a way where if there's something you can say about the defendant that will, like, for example, the defendant loves pepperoni pizza, but the jurors all love veggie pizza. And if you tell them he loves pepperoni pizza, there's going to be like, because he likes pepperoni pizza, we'll say he's guilty. Like that type of stuff, or is something?
Well, there's something, let's say, called hearsay.
Okay.
And if we're talking and you're in court, you're as a witness, and you're like, hey, David told me that the defendant did XYZ. And if David's not in court today and he's not going to testify to what he said, that statement doesn't come in. Okay. Because you have to defend what someone said. But there's ways that you can get David's statement in. There's certain evidence codes that are like, there's an exception to that. Yeah. If it was used for XYZ, then we're allowed you to use that statement. Okay.
Okay. So pretty much like
it's not fair.
Ethics of law. Would that be evidence codes? Not like ethics? Like how you use evidence in the courtroom and stuff like that?
Maybe a little bit. Like there's our relevance code. So if it's not relevant, like, yeah, that's a good example. Relevance is if it's not relevant, but it's going to prejudice the defendant. Like if this is a stealing case, and we're having a difficult time about proving that whether this guy stole or whatnot, and then you were going to bring in that
in high school he stole a bike.
Not even that, something irrelevant. Be like, hey, he's a racist.
Yeah.
That the jurors can be like, screw this guy, but it has nothing to do with him stealing. That shouldn't be even considered. Okay. So that kind of stuff is like irrelevant. We're not going to bring that in.
I got you.
It's not fair.
Yeah.
So that's evidence.
Okay. Evidence codes.
Right. There's codes. There's federal codes. California has their own codes.
Would you say, so I brought up like 5 topics, I think: writing, reading, analyzing, public speaking. Is public speaking, I'm guessing it is very important. How can somebody prepare themselves for public speaking? Especially now in 2020, we love using all these slang terminology and we don't use proper English, right? But if we're looking to be someone's looking to be a law student, that stuff usually does not work. So how could we kind of develop, what would you suggest to develop those skills?
First thing I'd suggest in owning those skills is confidence in knowing your craft. Okay. I think it's easier to speak. Like for me, I don't have an issue generally speaking in public. I'm comfortable speaking to people. But one thing that makes it difficult in law school for me to speak is speaking in front of students who I know they know better than me, who are smarter than me.
So you're
And so you start losing confidence. And when you lose confidence, it's harder to speak.
Okay.
You're scared to speak. You're scared to say stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the more prepared you are, the better you know your topic.
Okay.
Where it's like, hey, let's have a dialogue, professor and I. Like,
Yeah.
come at me. I know this.
Yeah.
And so you wouldn't have much difficulty speaking.
Okay.
Regarding necessity for a lawyer to speak, this
Mhm.
I would say majority of lawyers don't go to court. They don't
Okay.
speak in court. They talk on one-on-one basis with the client.
Mm-hmm.
Like majority of the cases don't go to trial. They're settlements and stuff.
Okay. Gotcha.
They agree on a deal outside of the court or through the court, but outside of trial. So you don't necessarily. It's not necessary.
Okay.
Public speaking, but our courses they're gonna.
It probably helps.
They'll test your public speaking. Yeah.
So last question, kind of, I think we'll wrap up with this, is you said you reached out to a couple people and you got they kind of brushed you off. What were the answers you were looking for from them? Maybe people are listening are looking for the same answers. And what were the questions you had, if you remember?
I didn't have enough questions because I generally knew almost nothing what I was getting myself into.
Okay.
And so it was kind of, and I can kind of see why I was brushed off if I look back. And it's because here's this kid talking to me about law and he's asking me these questions that it's like, dude, this is not what law school's about. And I to be fair, I think there's one person in particular I remember who was kind of like, you're not going to do good in law school. You're not going to like law school.
Okay.
And I was kind of taken back by that. But looking at it, this person knew me and they're like, they saw I wasn't committed. I was like, didn't care too much about school. And that was kind of the response. And they didn't want to help me much because they're like, why would I give you stuff and then I'm going to watch you fail?
Yeah. Okay.
And so I guess that was kind of my experience. But yeah, I mean, just.
So you would say before someone goes out and starts asking questions or meeting up, ask a lawyer to meet up with coffee, do your research. Obviously, come prepared, right, with the lawyer. Because like you said, if you come with the lawyer's like, dude, this kid's asking me questions, he's just wasting my time. He could go find this out by reading a book or researching a school or some stuff like that, right? Yeah.
I remember this one girl, she was preparing to become a district attorney. And I was still an undergrad, still considering law school, not even applying or any of that. And one thing she told me, now that I'm almost done, I relate, is she would recommend anyone go to law school, but she would never do it again. And same thing, I think I've tremendously changed as a person all around, maturity-wise, the way I think, behave. I feel like I find myself so much more professional all around than I was before. I don't know how I would have become this way without law school. But at the same time, like, it pains me to look back how like much I had to struggle during these last 3 years.
I bet, dude.
Sleepless nights. I remember just sometimes just frustrated studying. Like, I have a test tomorrow. I really don't get this. Like, almost in tears. Like at 3 a.m. went outside, sat on my driveway. Like, God, like, come on. Like, I've invested too much into this.
Yeah.
It's tough.
See, that's awesome, dude. It's like, I feel a sense of gratitude that you have a sense of gratitude because, like, even though it was so difficult, it was you have the option now to look back and say, like, it was worth it. I see fruits of my investment, like how you're saying your character changed, discipline, professionalism. So even though you came in, it was difficult and maybe you were intimidated by it, but like you said, it takes commitment. So if you're committed to it and you decided that's what you want to do, and it's kind of, that's how it goes in life. You committed to it, you decide that's what you want to do. And if you stay committed, you'll see your end results, you'll see your fruits, and you'll be inspired to do more, to do greater things. So that's
no risk, no reward.
No risk, no reward.
The higher the risk, the bigger the reward, or the bigger loss,
or the bigger the loss. Exactly. So if you go in, go all in. So thank you so much for sharing all that info. And if people are going to be reaching out, and I'm sure they will, we've had multiple people just call me, text me, DM me, and be like, hey, what's that guest number? Or do they have an Instagram? I'd like to ask them some questions about a career and stuff like that. So if if you're in college, you're in school, you're quitting, like you're an adult and you want to change careers, and maybe you have certain questions, right? Someone's looking for a lawyer that will share, or a student that will share information. Rad Lad, at Rad Lad.
Something like that.
You can DM him or reach out to us, and we can connect you guys. Again, thank you so much, sir, for coming on. It was a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And hope to see you continue the grind and move up with your career. So that's what it takes.
For sure.
Alrighty.